Greetings to you, my friend. I'm so glad you're here today. We're exploring to me, a very important question and some really good writings, and I'm excited about it. So, first, a little context. So, I'm sure it's this way all throughout the country, but being in the Midwest, and especially when I was delivering for Amazon all throughout the city of Indianapolis, in different communities and neighborhoods, in older cities, so very different cultures. So, some right leaning, some left leaning, etc. You see these signs all over the place, right? And I'm sure you've seen them where you are too, but signs such as just be kind, or choose kindness, or no slate of hate, et cetera, et cetera. There's all kinds of them, right? It's interesting that we seem to be projecting as a society that we are, or that we will choose to be kind, or accepting, or tolerant, or what have you. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's we're encouraging people to be kind because we know the reality is we're living in the most immoral time as a society we've ever lived in. Yes, even through all of our history, through all of the stuff we overcame, slavery and women's rights and all the rest you can imagine. Today we're in the most immoral time we've ever had. And I know this because you just look at our government. Have there always been corrupt people in our government? Yes, of course. Of course. But not like now. And no, I'm not talking about specific presidents, although we could talk about them too. So this isn't a President Trump, this isn't a President Biden. Doge currently is going through all kinds of financial records. So it's February 2025. And we see the corruption with our money. But we have to remember that most of this has all been sanctioned by people we voted in, by our representatives. They represent us. They are a representation of our society as a whole. And the vast majority, well, we'll leave it at that. Our society is, as a whole, abhors true morality. We crave a society where love is love and everyone has an open mind, and we choose science, and our teachers are social and philosophical experts, molding and shaping the minds of the next generation instead of teaching them how to think critically. Oh, also, can't forget in our capitalistic evil empire that money is evil. Money, in fact, is the root of all evil. Again, misquoting scripture, as we often do. So we are in a morally bankrupt time. So what is the question? What question are we pondering? Well, what are we missing? Where have we gone wrong? If we're choosing a kind, accepting, tolerable society, what are we missing? I think perhaps we should get a little more specific. And I think what happened is when our society divorced itself from God and we packed our bags and left his house, I think the question is, did we leave our understanding of the human heart back there? I think we did. I think our founders knew, even the ones that didn't believe in God or that weren't Christian or what have you, or had different faiths. By and large, they had an understanding of the human heart. So that's why Thomas Jefferson said, our society will only function for a moral people. I believe it was Jefferson or Adams. That's why we had such a breakdown of our government. We're not a moral people, by and large, as a society. So we're going to be exploring 4 different considerations from C.S. Lewis in 2 different books on the stories and the abolition of man. And in these 4 considerations, although they differ in various ways, they also have some things that overlap. But at the heart of them all is the condition of the human heart. So without further ado, here's Mr. Lewis with 4 movements on the human heart. Let's dive in.
Quillable Quotes Productions. We dive deep and swim around the ideas of the constructed ink on the pages. To seek out and find the precious diadems, the words of value worth wrestling with, that we may share with you the precious thoughts you may not have the time to find. We'll grab the book as you enjoy the gleanings. Blessings, my friend.
What, then, was I attacking? Firstly, a certain view about values. The attack will be found undisguised in the abolition of man. Secondly, I was saying, like St. James and Professor Haldane, that to be a friend of the world is to be an enemy of God. The difference between us is that the professor sees the world purely in terms of those threats and those allurements which depend on money. I do not. The most worldly society I have ever lived in is that of schoolboys, most worldly in cruelty and arrogance of the strong, the toadyism and mutual treachery of the weak, and the unqualified snobbery of both. Nothing was so base that most members of the school proletariat would not do it or suffer it to win the favor of the school aristocracy. Hardly any injustice too bad for the aristocracy to practice. But the class system did not in the least depend on the amount of pocket money. Who needs to care about money? If most things he wants will be offered by the cringing servility, and the remainder can be taken by force. This lesson has remained with me all my life. This is one of the reasons why I cannot share Professor Haldane's exaltation at the banishment of mammon from, quote, a sixth of our planet's surface, end quote. I have already lived in a world from which mammon was banished. It was the most wicked and miserable I have yet known. If mammon were the only devil, it would be another matter. But where mammon vacates the throne, how if Moloch takes his place? As Aristotle said, quote, men do not become tyrants in order to keep warm, end quote. All men, of course, desire pleasure and safety, but all men also desire power, and all men desire the mere sense of being in the know, or the inner ring, of not being outsiders. A passion insufficiently studied and the chief theme of my story. When the state of society is such that money is the passport to all these prizes, then of course money will be the prime temptation. But when the passport changes, the desires will remain. And there are many other possible passports. Position in an official hierarchy, for instance. Even now, the ambitious and worldly man would not inevitably choose the post with the higher salary. The pleasure of being high up and far within may be worth the sacrifice of some income.
I have hitherto been assuming that such teachers as Gaius and Titus do not fully realize what they are doing and do not intend the far-reaching consequences it will actually have. There is, of course, another possibility. What I have called presuming on their concurrence in a certain traditional system of values. The trousered ape and the urban blockhead may be precisely the kind of man they really wish to produce. The differences between us may go all the way down. They may really hold that the ordinary human feelings about the past, or animals, or large waterfalls, are contrary to reason and contemptible and ought to be eradicated. They may be intending to make a clean sweep of traditional values and start with a new set. That position will be discussed later. If it is the position which Gaius and Titus are holding, I must, for the moment, content myself with pointing out that it is a philosophical and not a literary position. In filling their book with it, they have been unjust to the parent or the headmaster who buys it, and who has got the work of amateur philosophers, where he expected the work of professional grammarians. A man will be annoyed if his son returned from the dentist with his teeth untouched and his head crammed with the dentist's obiter dicta on bimetallism or the Baconian theory.
Since I could see no answer to these questions, I draw the following conclusions. This thing which I have called, for convenience, the 𝓛, and which others may call natural law, or traditional morality, or the first principles of practical reason, or the first platitudes, is not one among a series of possible systems of value. It is the sole source of all value judgments. If it is rejected, all value is rejected. If any value is retained, it is retained. The effort to refute it and to raise a new system of value in its place is self-contradictory. There has never been, and never will be, a radically new judgment of value in the history of the world. What purport to be new systems, or, as they now call them, ideologies, all consist of fragments from the 𝓛 itself, arbitrarily wrenched from their context in the whole, and then swollen to madness in their isolation, yet still owing to the 𝓛 and to it alone such validity as they possess. If my duty to my parents is a superstition, then so is my duty to posterity. If justice is a superstition, then so is my duty to my country or my race. If the pursuit of scientific knowledge is a real value, then so is conjugal fidelity. The rebellion of new ideologies against the 𝓛 is a rebellion of the branches against the tree. If the rebels could succeed, they would find that they have destroyed themselves. The human mind has no more power of inventing a new value than of imagining a new primary color, or, indeed, of creating a new sun and a new sky for it to move in. Does this mean, then, that no progress in our perceptions of value can ever take place? That we are bound down forever to an unchanging code given once for all? And is it, in any event, possible to talk of obeying what I call the 𝓛? If we lump together, as I have done, the traditional moralities of East and West, the Christian, the pagan, and the Jew, shall we not find many contradictions and some absurdities? I admit all this. Some criticism, some removal of contradictions, even some real development is required. But there are two very different kinds of criticism. A theorist about language may approach his native tongue, as it were from outside, regarding its genius as a thing that has no claim on him, and advocating wholesale alterations of its idiom and spelling in the interests of commercial convenience or scientific accuracy. That is one thing. A great poet who has loved and been well nurtured in his mother tongue may also make great alterations in it, but his changes of the language are made in the spirit of the language itself. He works from within. The language which suffers has also inspired the changes. That is a different thing, as different as the works of Shakespeare are from basic English. It is the difference between alteration from within and alteration from without, between the organic and the surgical. In the same way, the 𝓛 admits development from within. There is a difference between a real moral advance and a mere innovation. From the Confucian, quote, "do not do to others what you would not like them to do to you," end quote, to the Christian, quote, "do as you would be done by," end quote, is a real advance. The morality of Nietzsche is a mere innovation. The first is an advance because no one who did not admit the validity of the old maxim could see reason for accepting the new one. And anyone who accepted the old would at once recognize the new as an extension of the same principle. If he rejected it, he would have to reject it as a superfluity, something that went too far, not as something simply heterogeneous from his own ideas of value. But the Nietzschean ethic can be accepted only if we are ready to scrap traditional morals as a mere error, and then to put ourselves in a position where we can find no ground for any value judgments at all. It is the difference between a man who says to us, "You like your vegetables modestly fresh,"
Why not grow your own and have them perfectly fresh? And the man who says, throw away that loaf and try eating bricks and centipedes instead. Those who understand the spirit of the 𝓛 and who have been led by that spirit can modify it in directions which that spirit itself demands. Only they can know what those directions are. The outsider knows nothing about the matter. His attempts at alteration, as we have seen, contradict themselves, so far as from being able to harmonize discrepancies in its letter by penetration to its spirit. He merely snatches at some one precept on which the accidents of time and place happen to have riveted his attention, and then rides it to death for no reason that he can give. From within the 𝓛 itself comes the only authority to modify the 𝓛. This is what Confucius meant when he said, quote, with those who follow a different way, it is useless to take counsel, unquote. This is why Aristotle said that only those who have been well brought up can usefully study ethics. To the corrupted man, the man who stands outside the 𝓛, the very starting point of this science is invisible. He may be hostile, but he cannot be critical. He does not know what is being discussed. This is why it was also said, this people that knoweth not the law is accursed, and he that believeth not shall be damned. An open mind in questions that are not ultimate is useful, but an open mind about the ultimate foundations, either of theoretical or of practical reason, is idiocy. If a man's mind is open on these things, let his mouth at least be shut. He can say nothing to the purpose. Outside the 𝓛, there is no ground for criticizing either the 𝓛 or anything else. But this course, though less inhumane, is not less disastrous than the opposite alternative of cynical propaganda. Let us suppose for a moment that the harder virtues could really be theoretically justified with no appeal to objective value. It still remains true that no justification of virtue will enable a man to be virtuous. Without the aid of trained emotions, the intellect is powerless against the animal organism. I had sooner play cards against a man who was quite skeptical about ethics, but bred to believe that a gentleman does not cheat, than against an irreproachable moral philosopher who had been brought up among sharpers. In battle, it is not syllogisms that will keep the reluctant nerves and muscles to their post in the third hour of the bombardment. The crudest sentimentalism, such as Gaius and Titus would wince at, about a flag or a country or a regiment, will be of more use. We were told it all long ago by Plato. As the king governs by his executive, so reason and man must rule the mere appetites by means of the spirited element. The head rules the belly through the chest. The seat, as Alanus tells us, of magnanimity, of emotions organized by trained habit into stable sentiments. The chest, magnanimity, sentiment. These are the indispensable liaison officers between cerebral man and visceral man. It may even be said that it is by this middle element that man is man. For by his intellect he is mere spirit, and by his appetites mere animal. The operation of the Green Book and its kind is to produce what may be called men without chests. It is an outrage that they should be commonly spoken of as intellectuals. This gives them the chance to say that he who attacks them attacks intelligence. It is not so. They are not distinguished from any other men by any unusual skill in finding truth or any virginal ardor to pursue her. Indeed, it would be strange if they were. A persevering devotion to truth, a nice sense of intellectual honor, cannot be long maintained without the aid of a sentiment which Gaius and Titus could debunk as easily as any other. It is not excess of thought, but defect of fertile and generous emotion that marks them out. Their heads are no bigger than the ordinary, It is the atrophy of the chest beneath that makes them seem so. And all the time, such is the tragicomedy of our situation, we continue to clamor for those very qualities we are rendering impossible. You could hardly open a periodical without coming across the statement that what our civilization needs is more drive, or dynamism, or self-sacrifice, or creativity. In a sort of ghastly simplicity, we remove the organ and demand the function. We make men without chests and expect of them virtue and enterprise. We laugh at honor and are shocked to find traitors in our midst. We castrate and bid the geldings be fruitful.
Well, I hope you found this encouraging, inspiring, or insightful in some way. I just really thoroughly enjoy C.S. Lewis, the same as I enjoy Thomas Sowell. He just writes in such a deep yet accessible way that gets me to think outside the box, to think differently, to ask better questions. And these certainly did that. So I encourage both of these readings. On Stories was good. The Abolition of Man was phenomenal. 5 stars. I would say is a must read, especially for the day and time we're in. I've read parts of it before. There's 3 essays. I've read the essay Men Without Chests multiple times. This is the first time going through the whole book. Definitely worth it. Highly encourage you to do it. And so it kind of just, it gets you to ponder. What am I missing in my own heart? What better questions do I need to ask even about myself? One thing is for sure. As a society, we have no hope but God. We must return to him. Period. No politician is going to save us. We must repent and turn to him. So hope this helped. How did it help? Put in the comments. And are you studying something different, but that kind of aligns to it, to this topic of the human heart and the day and time that we're in? Drop that in the comments. I love to check out those sources. And as always, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you spending time. Your time is the most valuable resource you will ever have. So I'm so grateful that you've shared some on this topic here with me today. And if there's someone that you think could benefit from this, please feel free to share the video and hit the like. And as always, blessings to you, my friend. Peace.